I take us off the rails.
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
Are they in the proper approach pattern for today?
Negative.
Hold weapons! Now! Charge the lightning field.
Charge the lightning fields, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dispatch Ajax. I'm Skip.
I am Jake.
He sure is. Now we're going to do our second part of subgenres of horror, obscure ones, especially ones you don't normally think about. So I'd like to start off with a little history so that we can lube it up a little bit so we can ease you in to the surprisingly complex and broad, let's just say broad.
You know, a fucking broad.
Never call chicks broads. Subgenre that is elevator horror. I know it might sound trivial or silly, but actually, it's relatively complex because it plays on a lot of base fears. So the earliest elevators were called hoists.
Ooh, that's fun.
That is fun. They were powered by human and animal power, so probably not great for the animal and probably a slave. Also, eventually, by hydraulic power. And now these go back to the 3rd century BCE. So we've been doing this for a while. We've been expended an inordinate amount of effort to be lazy. What we consider modern elevators were developed during the 19th century. These Cro-Magnon metal beasts slowly evolved from steam-driven to hydraulic power. Now, the first hydraulic elevators in the modern sense, were designed using water pressure as the source of power, which is the definition of hydraulic. I don't know why I copied that line. That's stupid.
Sorry.
No, you should be.
I think that elevators have been around longer. I seem to remember on the Flintstones that they had. Yeah, and that was a documentary filmed long ago. So
Filmed in real time. It's a living.
It's a living.
Starbuck, it's okay. She's having bad dreams.
She's stuck in an elevator.
Oh. She's living it up while she's going down. So, of course, when motors became more prevalent in industrial applications, its use and popularity and function sort of exploded all over somebody's chest. The first electric elevator was built by the German inventor Werner von Siemens in, that's right, laugh it up, boys, in 1880. And then in 1889, the first commercially successful electric elevator was installed, and because before that, everyone just laughed at it, apparently. In 1887, going back in time a second, an electric elevator with automated doors that would close off the elevator was patented. This, of course, made elevators safer so that you don't just walk into an empty void to your ultimate demise. And
Only
then,
I could.
Because of a lot of the technological and industrial innovations that occurred during World War II, elevators took a quantum leap to some other elevator's body to put right what once went wrong. So,
Sam, I don't think I should be in this elevator.
oh boy!
Why does this elevator have to kiss another elevator?
Oh no, I'm black and I'm a boxer. What do I do? Also, I can't walk in these high heels. That's unrelated.
It's true. Elevators have always had a tough time walking in high heels.
It's the oldest story, really. Not great fashion sense either. And also,
Really? I always thought it was elevated myself.
ooh, snap. Somebody sharpened that blade. You've got a rapist wit. I don't know. I watched a documentary not too long ago about elevator technicians and how it's a very common thing that I think it's something like 90% of all elevators in the world that have closed door buttons. Those buttons are not either working or just not connected to anything. But nobody complains about it because when the elevator doors do close eventually on their own, that they think they've done something to do so. Kind of like a lot of those walk buttons on crosswalks. Most of them, you can push that button, but it's just going to change when it changes.
Yeah, it's the illusion of agency.
Right. Yes, exactly. And I think that's funny that everyone thinks that it might as well just like dispense candy, would make it more useful because they don't do anything. Now, the reason this is a subgenre of horror is interesting because you think, well, how many stories can you come out of that? Like, why would that be all that scary? In reality, it's a rather surprisingly large subgenre being so specific because it plays on numerous fears that are all inherent to the human condition. Now, there is technically no recognized phobia of elevators. I mean, I'd make the argument, but really what you're doing is combining several other phobias when discussing elevators. Now, it's usually claustrophobia or agoraphobia. Agoraphobia, of course, is the fear of being trapped in a situation in which escape would be difficult or impossible. That usually leads to a panic attack. If I remember right, also deals with the fear of the outside, large, wide open spaces, because you're not in control of your immediate surroundings. And then, ironically, or maybe, I guess ironically, or maybe oxymoronically, the other fear that it plays on is claustrophobia, which is the fear of being in an enclosed, tight space where you don't have control over your immediate surroundings. So
sounds like a good Saturday night to me.
Does it? It's all right for fighting, so whatever. So people on both ends of that phobia are afraid of elevators in a lot of instances. As a relatively small and confined box, you can see how an elevator would be terrifying, but also with agoraphobia, not being able to control necessarily the direction or the function of the mechanical elevator is also terrifying. Now, one of the other factors that play into this are that a lot of phobias, specifically with elevators, can be traced to a previous experience that had caused panic, fear, fright, a state of panic and traumatic experience from the past. Those who have been stuck in an elevator, even for a short time, are more likely to develop a phobia of being in an elevator. But it doesn't need to necessarily even happen to you. Elevators, obviously, as per the episode, are prominently featured in horror movies, scary stories, a lot of frightening pop culture moments, and it's exceedingly rare that something ever actually goes wrong in an elevator. They very rarely actually get stuck, and when they do, it's not usually a big deal. Statistically, elevators are safer than driving a car, like Superman said in Superman and then Superman Returns. Statistically, it's still the safest way to travel, but just vertically and inside a building. But, when those things are put into pop culture, put out there in the ether, they're oftentimes, rebroadcast or seen again or rerun, or you go to see the movie again. And so, like, if you're prone to that phobia that they're dangerous or they're something you can't control, and it's just kind of like hypes itself up, even though nothing ever really happens in an elevator. So watching a scary movie, if you're prone to phobias like that, can cause a reaction that's just as real as you actually being in the scenario. It's a triggering event. That being said, on August 8th, 2021, Tony Liu, a resident of Omaha, Nebraska, found himself in an elevator in the worst possible scenario. It was something like out of a movie, Tony said. As a Saturday night storm dropped hail and brought flash flooding to the streets of Omaha, Liu and his two friends decided to leave their apartment and examine the damage outside on the street from his downtown apartment building, which is about half a mile from where I am right now. I recorded video. It was a flash flood. It came on suddenly with golf ball-sized hail. The Omaha area is extremely hilly. It's all like northwest Missouri. I'm on a ground floor apartment. I remember opening my door and looking out, and the water was gushing over the sidewalk. And we were on a hill. The enormous amount of water that the entire city got was mind-boggling. So Lou and his friends climbed aboard the elevator around 10 p.m. And then when they reached the lobby, the water came gushing through the vents into the elevator before the doors could even open.
It's wild.
It was crazy. Once it got to my stomach, we kind of figured, okay, this is real, Tony said. He recorded a video of the incident, which clearly shows floodwater at that point up to his shoulders. His friends in the elevator attempted to call 911, begged for help to come, because this happened in a matter of seconds. Thankfully, Deus Ex Machina, Lou called his roommate, who happened to be a maintenance person for the building. And this is all caught on video, he said, quote, "We might die if you don't come help us." Before first responders could even arrive, Lou's roommate, the maintenance guy, his brother, and a friend of theirs managed to take the stairs, go all the way down to the lobby, and physically pry open the doors, which weren't mechanically able to open on their own. And at that point, once again, all recorded on video, the water was up to Tony's chin. And he was standing on the railing in the elevator. I mean, they had literally just inches of air left before the ceiling. And then, thankfully, his roommate, brother, and friends opened the doors. All the water came pouring out like in The Shining and flooded the entire lobby. He said, quote, "I was swimming out." Please, anyone who's listening, go watch the video. It is insane. It was like a movie. Thankfully, none of them were actually hurt, other than the trauma. Meteorologists, including friend of the show, reported that 3 to 5 inches of rain fell in Omaha in about 10 minutes.
It would have been more, but the rain was just in the pool, so...
And I remember there were people stranded on the roofs of their houses or apartments. I remember watching cars pull up to stoplights and then drifting off to the side onto the median before it sort of snagged. So you could see why incidents like this would play into a vast number of phobias. It's actually a pretty terrifying possibility, and these things do happen. They're real. Now, like I said before, these are rare, very, very rare instances, but they do happen. So the subgenre of elevator horror is surprisingly diverse. Obviously, with any subgenre of horror, it's hit and miss, but it is rich with source material. So we're going to talk about some movies, why they play into different fears, and why those all still work, even though under an umbrella of elevators. So, the first one is a movie called The Lift. Clever marketing.
Right. Seems a bit on the nose, but
Well, it's also known as Fahrstuhl des Grauens in German.
You don't say.
Oh, no, not German. Dutch. That's Dutch. Yes, I did say, believe it or not. And that wasn't me hacking up a lung. It was Fahrstuhl des Grauens.
What did I do wrong? I'm sorry.
It's like listening to German hip hop. You just like, I'm sorry. Why are you yelling at me?
999.
It was released on the 4th of July in 1985, even though it was a Dutch film. Because of the way that the Netherlands work, which is really fascinating, they actually almost all also speak English as opposed to just the native Dutch language. So in movies that are from that part of the world, oftentimes they will switch back and forth with no subtitles or warning because they just assume everybody kind of knows both. And they do that conversationally too. So it's in both English and Dutch. IMDb gives it 6.2 stars, which is actually not bad for an IMDb rating. So, picture it. Sicily, 1940... No, it's...
It's like I'm there.
I saw it all. For everyone else out there, a lift is an elevator. In Europe, they call them lifts. And in Star Trek, they call them turbo lifts. I think they're trying to be more international since they're also interstellar. So in this, an elevator begins displaying erratic behavior. It could be Tourette's, I don't really know. For instance, trapping partygoers and nearly suffocating them. And then it decapitates a security guard. Red flag. Red flag.
Well, I mean, what was he wearing? Was he asking for it?
Oh, you're right. You're right. Shouldn't have been wearing those lifts. Oh, wait.
No, it's part of his getup. He has to.
Oh, yeah, you got to wear those big heeled ankle boots if you're going to be a security guard. I mean, that's just common
If you're
sense.
working in the lift, you got to have lifts.
Exactly. I got this plot summary from IMDb, so this isn't me writing. This actually comes from somebody. Some places I'm paraphrasing, but this is how it was written. Felix, the technician from the lift company, can't find anything wrong with the circuitry. Okay. When he and a nosy reporter began asking questions of the lift company's electronics partner, Rising Sun Electronics, his boss puts him on a leave of absence.
Wait, is this the Felix in the movie that's played by Hub Stapel?
Probably.
If it's Felix, then
Yes.
yes. I only mentioned him because in another Dick Mass feature that I've actually seen, The Saint, where he plays like a murderous Saint Nicholas, kidnapping and killing children.
Well, are we talking about The Saint, the adaptation of the TV show with Roger Moore, starring Val Kilmer? Because I don't remember any of that.
It's all one and the same. You just got to keep watching.
It's the convergence. It's the singularity. Also in this plot summary, a subsequent visit to a professor leads them to believe that some evil experiments were being conducted with microchips. That was in all caps.
No.
Yeah, that's it.
The evil of the future, circa 1983. It's in microchips.
Well, did you ever notice how in Cold War spy stuff, everything was on microfilm? Because that was a thing. I mean, there was a famous spy who snuck microfilm out of Nazi Germany. It had a bunch of Nazi secrets on it, recipes, things like that.
This strudel is for...
And then, but it seems like writers after that, they just like micro scribbles it out. Chips. It's all the same thing. It's a microchip. Like it's the same.
Chips.
They didn't have to do anything else. Microfilm? No. Now it's microfiche? No. Microchips. There it is.
All right, we can only smuggle this out on Laserdisc.
those big RCA cartridges.
Yes.
It only fits on my 8mm. Here's some of the taglines for this film. Take the stairs. Take the stairs, for God's sake. Take the stairs! 3 exclamation points. And here's one of the best quotes they had on IMDb from this film. The head waiter, obviously a huge role. These damn machines will be the death of us all someday.
Fact.
This is panning out as we speak. Elevators have been kicked into maximum overdrive. It is going to be the death of us all. Here's a review posted also. An engrossing urban thriller. That's a loaded statement. An engrossing urban thriller in one environment we can't avoid. Well, I mean, you could always take the stairs, but whatever. It could easily have been silly, but it definitely is not. The last part, with Felix lit only by his industrial hand lamp in the enemy's own domain, which I guess is the elevator, is completely engrossing. The quite sparse music is eerily effective, and the photography is very good, as are the performances. The dubbing is well done and convincing. Well, all right, you've already kind of convinced us otherwise with that statement. Another winner from the Netherlands. About time we high-risers took the lift seriously.
What is that mean?
There's a lot going on there. I don't even know where we start with that, but probably on the ground floor. I said it was made in the Netherlands, but here it says it's Dutch. I'm confused.
Stupid.
Holland is the Netherlands. Then who are the Dutch? So our second film is one that JQ and I are both very, very well acquainted with, and I think proves the variety and diversity of this subgenre. It's a little movie from 1997 called Cube.
Cube.
No, that was a Cuban propaganda film. That's completely different. It was directed by Vincenzo Natali, and it was written by Andre Bialik, Vincenzo Natali, and Graham Manson.
Graham Manson.
In this movie, 6 different people from diverse backgrounds and walks of life wake up to find themselves inside a giant cube, and it links to thousands of possible rooms. Now, each people in the party has a skill that becomes clear when they have to work together to escape. There's a cop, a math geek, an architect, a doctor, an escape artist, which seems a little on the nose as well, and a disabled man. And each of them, of course, plays a key role into unlocking the mystery of the cube, which honestly, I feel like somebody just was playing with a Rubik's Cube and came up with an idea for a horror movie. And of course, none of them knows why they're there. They don't know the rules of the cube itself. The rooms keep shifting as they're in. Jake, you remember Cube. What's your take on Cube?
I like it. It's a solid ramping up of the suspense, and you're trying to figure out what's going on as the characters are trying to move through and survive. Mm-hmm. And they get picked off kind of one by one, as the truth of humanity must shine through.
It's a little like it's got notes of Lifeboat in that it's an ensemble cast and nobody knows who each other is and are all suspicious of each other. It's also very similar in narrative framework as that great Twilight Zone episode. You know which one I'm talking
Characters in Search of an Exit?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, where they... In fact, it's kind of exactly that. Cube is exactly that Twilight Zone episode, which, as you'll find with a lot of horror tropes, is kind of common. That they just they ripped off Twilight Zone, like Child's Play.
It's different between... there's rip-offs, and then there's utilizing a trope to make something of equal or higher quality.
I don't know. The Cube is higher quality than that Twilight Zone episode.
I'm just saying
right.
It doesn't come across as a rip-off of that. It's taking, similar concepts and doing their own thing to produce something new and enjoyable.
Yeah, I would also say it's not homage even. It's actually, I think you're right. I think it's just like, this is a proven framework that could be used in multiple applications, and it's a fascinating idea. Now, Saw obviously takes a lot from that as well, but in sort of a more blunt, kind of dumbed down way, in the way that Child's Play did from, that episode of Twilight Zone.
There is an element of almost the cosmic horror aspect of this, of its almost unknowable sci-fi.
Yeah,
where
because
they're plucked from reality, put in this place. They don't understand how, why, what, and they're trying to get out. They can find out what happens at the end.
Right, of course, yeah. But like you're right, because the technology involved seems sort of otherworldly. Each room that they have to escape from requires, obviously, a particular set of skills. Man, if they just had Liam Neeson, they'd have been out of there in like 10 minutes. But then, of course, you've been confronted by a gray wolf, and then we'll never know. It's like the spinning top. But they have to use... Well, as you go along, you find out who has what skills, what perils lie in each room. Like one where you step into a room and then acid falls on you. Like the worst you can't do this on television episode of all time. And then there's, one with spikes and lasers and what have you in every room. And so they have to unlock the puzzle from the inside to be able to escape.
An interesting fact I just found out about this. Each of the characters was named after famous prisons.
Oh.
So there's Levin and Worth and Quentin, perhaps his first name is San, Kazan, which is a famous mental hospital, Alderson, Holloway, Renee. It's just interesting.
At that point, it's about as subtle as, the way that they name characters in Lost. That is a really interesting detail that I really hadn't thought about.
It's just fun. Yeah.
No, it is. It's good. It's kind of like in, was it the remake of Evil Dead, where all the characters... first letter of each of their names spells was it like evil or something?
It spells poop shoot.
It probably does that. Yeah, that's probably what it is.
Yeah.
A lot of characters in that one.
Lots of characters. Lots of shitty characters.
Really diverse, yeah. No, but check out Cube. Cube's a really cool movie for what it is. It's a low-budget film. It's Canadian. It stars Kids in the Hall and Deep Space Nine's own Nicole DeBauer in one of her early roles. Yeah, it's worth a watch. It really is an intriguing hidden gem B movie from that era. I mean, in an era which like the Matrix movies were big, and this movie was, a sci-fi thriller. Also probably around the same time as like Event Horizon, which has kind of a similar tone and everything, but way bigger budget.
Yeah, most certainly.
But for its limited budget and its, sort of a bottle episode of a movie, really intriguing. I think a really fascinating thriller suspense movie, kind of gory in places. They play on all the classic, like, nobody trusts each other and they turn on each other and then they have to, yada, yada, yada. But
Just like a Twilight Zone episode.
it's like a Twilight Zone episode. So check out Cube if you can. It's actually a pretty solid one.
Can I inquire, Skip?
Yes, sir, of course.
So this goes into the realm of the elevator horror genre.
Right. Yes. Because each of these rooms shifts as they go along. Oh, the reason I included it was because each room, because it's like a Rubik's Cube in that each of them shifts, well, basically all directions. But the idea is that they're trying to go up to get out of the situation, and so each of the rooms themselves operates as an elevator, shifting between configurations. It's like they're in the puzzle box. They're in the Lament configuration. So a lot of the tropes that you see in elevator horror specifically play out in situational peril. So I thought it was an important one to include because it's kind of thinking outside the box, for lack of a better term, each room as it shifts locations acts as, a sort of a cellular elevator. And if I'm wrong in that assessment, feel free. I think of it that way. There are actual, like, elements and moments in the film where they're shifting between rooms. Sometimes they're not on the same level because they haven't shifted to the same elevation. And so a lot of the stuff that you see in elevator horror, those elements play out per room. So it's kind of like a modular elevator film.
A strange thing about this film, one of the actors, Andrew Miller, was the writer, and Vincenzo Natali was also going to be the director of a television reboot of Tremors in 2018, where they supposedly filmed a pilot where this is going to be a TV movie that would spawn a series starring Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward.
What?
Yeah, apparently it didn't get picked up.
Wow, but there is a pilot out there with Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward?
Supposedly, Kevin Bacon announced through his Instagram account on April 27, 2018 that the show would not be moving forward as the network decided not to pick it up.
Oof. Well,
At that time, however, a full pilot had been produced.
Fascinating, which means we have to track that down now.
Well, I don't know if you can get that.
Well, it used to be easier to get stuff like that, but
I'll see what I can see what these fast little fingers can do.
You see what you can. You see what you solve that Cube. See if we can get going here. And of course, there are multiple Cube movies. There's Cube 2 Hypercube, which you're kind of already setting yourself up for disappointment there because where can you go? And then the third film was a prequel to the first one called Cube Zero. The sequels obviously they don't quite live up to the first one, but they're also not that bad. They don't drop off down the elevator shaft of quality as much as you'd think they would.
Fascinating. Last year, there was it looks like Japanese remake.
Really?
Just called Cube.
Clever.
Yeah.
I would be fascinated to see that, actually. We should definitely look at that. Maybe we'll do an episode on reviewing that one, because that, an Eastside Theater Guild episode, that would be fascinating.
Yeah, let me see where it's at.
Do yourself a favor, just go check out Cube. If you have any sort of geek movie cred, or you consider yourself a person who watches, those kinds of films, Cube's kind of a standard. You kind of have to watch Cube. Now, coming back to something we discussed earlier, our next film is called Devil.
Oh...
Mm-hmm. Directed by John Eric Dowdle.
There's definitely one I just wanted to get to at some point. So
okay, well, if
were you going to talk about The Shaft from 2001?
I was planning on it.
Okay,
yes.
cool. All right,
but feel free if you.
No.
I don't have
anything to say other than that it exists.
Oh, yeah. No. I'm pretty sure.
I didn't know if you're going to go. I thought it might be chronologically because you jump because The Shaft is a remake of The Lift,
which is also
it's done by the exact same person, Dick Mass.
The Lift or Lift? Oh, okay.
The one you talked about the first.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, yes. Because there's also a movie just called Lift, and I also talked about that one a little bit.
Oh, okay. It was just like it just looks to be a remake. I mean, it's literally an English remake. with your go-to remaking foreign horror films, Naomi Watts. But it also has Michael Ironside, Dan Hedaya, Ron Perlman.
Does Michael Ironside lose a limb?
I think he probably does.
Sweet.
I can neither confirm or deny what Dick Mass brought us, but...
Hold on one second.
Taglines, your next stop is hell.
Good.
Wow. This is
what?
fascinating. A wide theatrical release in the United States was ultimately canceled due to 9/11 terrorist attack. Oof. Although entirely coincidental, the film makes several references to terrorism in NYC, getting as specific as mentioning planes hijacking and Osama bin Laden destroying the World Trade Center.
Whoa. Hello. Somebody was in on it.
Oh, man.
Was it a Saudi-produced film? Because that'd be really funny. Al-Qaeda Films presents the Mujahideen production.
Huh.
All right.
And apparently Naomi Watts is actually afraid of elevators.
Okay. Is she claustrophobic, you think? Or
IMDb trivia is not the most detailed.
It's not quite
sources.
in the... Yeah, they don't really cite the AMA a lot, so...
Although this user review does say, even though it's a 2-star review, the best elevator kills people movie ever.
Woo, that's a bold statement.
The film was also called Down.
Okay, well, we'll get to that too, because there are multiple elevator movies called Down.
That's stupid.
Well, what do you expect from a Dick Mass?
I expect a massive dick.
Oh, I was thinking you get into some cancer screening. From the brilliant, twisted mind of M. Night Shyamalan's friend, John Eric Dowdle.
Hi,
Dowdle.
my name's John.
Can I direct your movie? Of course, it was written by Brian Nelson. Any relation?
I can neither confirm or deny that I have killed Brian Nelson and stolen his last name's identity.
And worn his skin as a mask.
It makes me feel whole.
One day I'll have that suit complete. It stars Chris Messina of Loggins and Messina fame, Caroline Davernus, and this is one of the greatest names I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Bokeem Woodbine.
Yeah, I love Bokeem.
Bokeem Woodbine. Bokeem Woodbine.
He's really good in that season of Fargo.
So, in classic M. Night Shyamalan fashion, and as people, you and I, Jake, are homers. We're Kansas City homers. We have pride. We're obnoxious about it, in fact. M. Night Shyamalan cannot stop himself from inserting, even completely unnecessarily, Philadelphia into at least some part of the narrative thread of each of his films, even ones he produces. So in this film, which got 6.3 stars from IMDb, which is also not bad.
It doesn't need that many.
I agree with you 100%. That's not... I hate this movie, in fact, but yeah.
I gave it 3, I just realized.
That seems fair. Mm-hmm. All right, it seems fair. Detective Bowden is still grieving for his wife and son killed in a hit-and-run 5 years prior. When someone jumps from a skyscraper onto a truck, Bowden is sent to investigate. I don't know if there's a lot of mystery there. How'd he die? Well, gravity?
Never heard of him.
Get him out of here. Meanwhile, 5 strangers, once again, the stranger ensemble thing, are trapped in an elevator in the building from which the jumper jumped. I was paraphrasing it. I paraphrased myself into a corner.
Right into an elevator.
Yeah, exactly. It's just right down the shaft. The radio in the elevator, of course, is broken, but guards Lustig and Ramirez observe those trapped in the elevator on CCTV as events unfold. Tensions run high among those trapped, so Lustig calls the police, and Detective Bowden, who apparently doesn't have a first name in this version of it, he assumes the case. Without being able to contact the individuals inside, he tries to work out who they are, but he can only account for 4 of them. Time is running out for the occupants, I don't want to say occupants, because it seems like they live there, for the
visitors?
Sure, the guests, I don't know, of the elevator as Biden, wow, Biden's not going to figure out anything at this point, realizes he has to get them out quickly, which you think would have just kind of always been don't you always think you have to get them out quickly out of the stuck elevator? Whatever. This movie is sort of classic Shyamalan adjacent. It's overly simplistic and takes itself way too seriously. The narrative, the backstories, the ultimate reveals are way more serious and heavy-handed than they really have any right to be. There's not a lot of substance there to justify the tone and atmosphere of the film. And it just, I mean, and honestly, it didn't... Did you ever see the trailer in the theaters or anything?
I can't remember it.
But I do remember seeing the trailer. It's sort of a classic Shyamalan thing where it's like, okay, there's people trapped in an elevator. Already not enough to carry a film, in my mind at the time, before doing research on all this stuff. And then it was called Devil. And it was like, oh, I wonder what that movie's about. It's probably about the Kennedy assassination. Oh, wait, no, it's about the devil. It's more like an episode of a show than it is the premise for a movie. And as it turns out, we weren't the only people to have that impression. Here's a really great quote about it. Things have gotten so bad that when the trailer for Devil hit the theaters with the on-screen tagline from the mind of M. Night Shyamalan, guffaws were reported from audiences, and online gadflies like Perez Hilton had a field day posting viral videos mocking the promos. So basically, people were just laughing at the entire premise and idea just by watching the trailer, which explains why the movie also not only sucks, but did not do very well, either critically or financially. So you can watch it. I know there are a lot of M. Night Shyamalan lovers out there. Fine, it's okay to like a movie. It's okay to like a director. As long as it's not Uwe Boll, more power to you. But honestly, Shyamalan's own shtick is already, had already kind of fizzled at this point. And then now he's directing sort of like pale imitations of his, or not directing, but producing pale imitations of his own shtick with other people, and it's such an afterthought of an idea that really thinks it's a heavy-hitting horror film that it's really, sure, go watch it, but get real high beforehand so that it's more entertaining, because it's really not very good.
Yeah, meh. But it is a heavy hitter in the elevator horror genre.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's a direct... I mean, this is one of the best examples of elevator horror. In this one, it's about an elevator. Elevator's the main backdrop, but it's a little like how we have to differentiate what we call Christmas movies, like with Die Hard and Gremlins, where it's like, is the elevator the backdrop? Is it a plot device? Is it a plot point? Is it the setting? Is it the point of the narrative? Like, is the elevator the protagonist or antagonist? I'd like to see where it was a protagonist. That actually would be a really interesting idea, where you're rooting for the elevator the whole time. But in this one, it's the backdrop and also plot device at the same time. It's kind of setting up the thing, but the ultimately I don't want to say it's a MacGuffin, but it's ultimately kind of just the setting for this. It's a lot like, and we're going to use this a lot, but like Lifeboat, the Hitchcock film, you can't have this story necessarily the way it's told not being set in the elevator, but the elevator ultimately doesn't really play into the actual narrative thread or the twist or what have you. So, I mean, but it is firmly planted in this subgenre as actually probably one of the more direct examples of elevator horror. And since I didn't do these in any order, but taking from that, there are things that we do have to kind of differentiate what is elevator horror and what is horror that happens to have an elevator in it. One example is the film adaptation of the video game Resident Evil from the 1990s. Because in that one, elevators are not the point, even though elevators are crucially important because they're going underground down into a bunker. And the opening horror scene in it plays it's a big plot point and is used as a plot device. an elevator gets stuck. They're the Umbrella Corporation. Look up Resident Evil if you don't know what this is, but because we don't have to explain the whole thing. But they, the secret laboratory gets locked down because there's a leak of the T virus or whatever the fuck it is, and they get some of the scientists get stuck in an elevator. And because all these systems get shut down, and so they pry open the doors, and one of them sticks their head out to try and see what's going on, and then all of a sudden the elevator gets power again, and as it goes down, it shears the woman's head off. Okay. But then it comes back into play later as well. They have to deal with all those zombies stuck on the elevator, and they have to take the path of the elevator to get down into the bunker. And so I would not say it's an elevator horror movie at its core, but it does have a lot of elements that are necessary for the subgenre. So it's at least worth a mention. There's a little asterisk there for that one, I feel like, at least.
Yeah, I mean, you can get into, there's elevator horrors, and then there's elevator horror's a genre, and then there's elevator horror scenes in other films where the elevator isn't, a Final Destination 2, a Deep Red from Argento, Cabin in the Woods.
I was going to mention, of course, Final Destination 2, but another good example of that would be The Omen 2, or Damien, The Omen 2, where there's a really disturbingly graphic elevator horror scene that plays as a plot device and a plot point, but is in no way, shape, or form the driving horror of the film. It's just a set piece that plays into the narrative, which is not to diminish the horrific nature of the scene or the elevator concept, because it is terrifying and it does fit in well, but it's not about the elevator. That's just a really important part of the movie. If you don't know what The Omen 2 Damien is, the original Omen trilogy is actually kind of fascinating and really kind of baffling. The Omen, done by Richard Donner, is a really great classic horror film about the birth of the Antichrist, and a couple adopts the Antichrist, and you start to realize that he's evil. And then you go to the Omen 2, and Damien Thorne, he's now a preteen. He's just figuring out who he is. He knows now that he's something like the Antichrist. He's a rapscallion up to monkey shines in that he kills a lot of people and is trying to figure out how to fulfill his destiny as the Antichrist. Watch it for that scene, because it is actually probably the most graphic scene in the movie. But also, his teacher, who's sort of guiding him, is Lance Henriksen. So we get a really young Lance Henriksen in that one. Mm-hmm. So. And then we get to The Omen 3, just so you kind of have a lay of the land. You get Sam Neill as an adult Damien, who eventually realizes who he is, tries to get himself in the presidential administration, and in the end, Jesus comes back. Spoiler alert, the Bible... It's a real revelation, everybody. And then, of course, like what you mentioned earlier, Final Destination 2 from 2003, directed by David Ellis, starring A.J. Cook, Ali Larter, and the one and only Tony Todd, ladies and gentlemen. And I didn't put the other one in here, but I should mention, also has another great horror movie elevator scene in multiple Candyman movies. Especially the newest one. There's a really great moment where an elevator plays a significant part of the psychological ennui of the film. Tony Todd rules. It's the medical term. The Final Destination movies, for those of you who don't know, very quickly, they were pitched by a writer of the X-Files as an X-Files episode. But for some reason, it was rejected, and he thought he was onto something, so he shopped it around until it landed in the exact right time and place where horror movies were now bigger budget, they were more mainstream, and they were appealing to the youth of the day. That's where you get like Scream, which is its own thing, obviously, but then I Know What You Did Last Summer, and that whole genre of darkly shot, shitty hairstyles, teen horror films. There are several of them, obviously, several Final Destinations, which you think, you have final in the title, you think the first one would be it, but no. where the idea is that they're trying to escape death, and they were destined. These kids were all destined to die in a specific thing that they lived accidentally or through some intervention, and then death will eventually come for them because their deaths are a fixed point in time, that kind of whole thing. So that having been said, the scene with the elevator is actually completely absurd and so random that it's a weird outlier in the genre, because in the scene, which you can find these scenes on YouTube, so I would encourage you to do so. There are these two people in the elevator with her, one of which has a cart filled with prosthetic limbs for amputees, and the young woman's hair, as she's trying to leave the elevator, this long ponytail gets caught in the hook of one of the prosthetic limbs, and then the doors close and the elevator moves, and she gets her scalp ripped off. And actually, probably, is it her whole head gets ripped off?
Yeah, her head, she gets decapitated.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, her whole head goes. Which is like that's not one of those ones you'd be like, yep, check the boxes of all these cliches and tropes. The prosthetic limb decapitation we were all waiting for. Now we're going to go to the Far East in a film called Gusha no Bendume, or The Bottled Fools, also known as Hellevator.
Elevator.
This came out in 2004. It's directed by Hiroki Yamaguchi, who also wrote it.
That sounds made up.
It starred Luchino Fujisaki. Luchino, really?
Yeah.
It is kind of awesome, actually. Yoshichi Kawada and Ryosuke Koshiba.
Yeah.
Koshiba, yeah. And then this one gets 5.4 stars from IMDb. This also comes from a plot summary from IMDb. The Bottled Fools is a dystopian future somewhat reminiscent of THX 1138. Wow, that's a specific... Okay, sure, why not? Apparently, the outside world is no longer fit for human habitation. Everyone stays indoors. Large elevators are used to get from one place to another, and communicate time on these vehicles seems to be substantial for most people. That's a confusing sentence. After dropping an illegal cigarette and running away from the police, thus starting a chain of events that culminates in a large explosion a few minutes later, man, whoever wrote this has no idea. They're all over the place with punctuation. They don't know how to use a semicolon. They don't know how to use a comma. Luchino Fujisaki, a 17-year-old telepath. So once again, we're dipping our toes into Stephen King territory here. A 17-year-old telepathic schoolgirl who has recently been released from a mental institution in spite of her ongoing violent urges and or delusions, pick a horse, enters one of the elevators. The elevator soon becomes a Hellevator!
Bum, bum, bum.
When a young, nervous police officer enters with two extremely dangerous prisoners moments before the aforementioned large explosion causes him to be distracted long enough for the prisoners to get the upper hand and wreak havoc. Somebody take an English class, for God's sake. Eventually, Luchino gets a little berserk herself and kills people. As this unusual scenario plays out, each of the eight passengers is involved in multiple acts of violence, and it's revealed that virtually every one of them has something to hide. So they took that ensemble. Nobody knows who the other is. We've got all these desperate elements coming together. Everybody's suspicious of each other. And in this one, it just kind of ramps up into ultra violence, like they'd just been to a milk bar.
Yeah. A user review said Japanese Brazil.
I could see that.
Yeah, it sounds like they're trying to get a little weird with the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a little absurdist. It's a little... Yeah, I could see that. One of the user reviews, this line I liked. Hellevator is fairly well done... Hellevator is a fairly well done cyberpunk movie that makes adequate use of an unusual setting but runs out of steam just before the inexplicable ending, which we will not spoil for you, but I think that is a relatively accurate summation of that film. And it's definitely in that vein, train spotting era. So if you want to watch something that actually feels a little out of date, it came out in 2004, but it feels like a movie that should have come out in 1998. It has a little bit of Natural Born Killers going on, a little bit of Brazil. it feels like it's squeezing that genre too hard. Like it's trying too hard to take the elements we see in other elevator horror films and go to the extreme. So it's, I don't know. If you're bored and you have some friends around and you've been drinking a bit, go ahead, watch it. But otherwise, you could probably kind of skip that one.
Yeah, at least it does sound different than the others, and I kind of like this like Snowpiercer-esque, future on an elevator. That sounds interesting.
That's true. And since you say that, in that vein, I think a movie that more people need to see, a film called The Platform, or El Hoyo, from 2019, by Galder Gaztulio Urrutia.
You got that?
Galder Gaztulio Urrutia. Written by David DeSola and Pedro Rivero. Nailed that one. It stars Ivan Misagiu and Zorian Aguilar, which is an awesome name.
Zorian Astrian.
And then also Antonia San Juan, which is one of the best porn stars' names I've ever heard. Now,
go away.
Is he thinking of me? Now, if you want to talk about Brazil-esque or sort of like post-cyberpunk, this movie is a feast.
I saw what this guy's doing.
Yeah, but they don't get it yet because I haven't explained it. But they, in this movie, a mysterious place, an indescribable prison. I feel like we should just break out into a tune from Aladdin. A deep hole.
Yes, please.
Starring Antonio San Juan. A deep hole.
It just keeps going and going.
Deeper.
You can put whatever chicken bones you want in there.
Take the stairs. 2 inmates living on each level. It's a sort of prison scenario where there's it's like a giant shaft also, and it's sort of a rectangular, ring around a moving platform. It's commentary on social class and obviously also, prison systems and things like that. So
yeah, one might call it a trickle-down food, the movie.
Oh, you know what? It's actually, I didn't even think about that. You're right. It's very much like trickle-down economics, the movie, where they believe that the top level from which it descends is an enormous opulent feast. Think about like Hook. They decide to make believe they aren't starving to death. And they have all this amazing, well-crafted food.
I like Hook is the one you went for like opulent feasts.
Well, I honestly couldn't think of anything else off the top of my head. That was the first, it just popped in there. And in blunt on the nose commentary, the idea is that the platform starts out with enough food to feed everyone in the prison. But as it goes down per level, the prisoners are assigned to certain levels, the criteria of which I don't remember being clear, but
I don't think they make it necessarily clear. I think it's...
No, I don't think so either. I think it's just the idea that there are levels. So it starts off with enough food, for the ones at the top, they can gorge themselves on this opulent spread that would make Queen Elizabeth blush from beyond the grave. And then it descends, and each level becomes more and more chaotic. Each level gets less food, obviously, since the ones above gorge themselves, so then that multiplies exponentially as you go down. And so as the platform descends, which is only a short period of time, people get desperate and grab whatever they can. Utter chaos and animalistic fight for survival. But there's a whole socialist commentary. If they work together on different levels, they have a chance to all survive with enough food, but you have to fight the brutal, capitalistic, selfish instincts of the people from the upper levels. I actually really liked this movie, and it's...
Agreed.
I think it's shot well. I think they have a really great tone and vibe. The commentary, even though kind of beating you over the head with it, works.
I think it is proper sci-fi where it is, using science fiction to point out social issues in a very obvious way, but using the drama and the excitement to keep it moving forward. I don't know if it's a fast-moving film, but it felt like the pacing was really good and just it moved right along. It said exactly what it wanted to say, and it didn't need to be extraneous or, have too much frill.
Well,
It's a good, solid, complete film.
It is. I agree. I think one of the reasons the pacing works so well is because it's so meted out in specific chunks of time, in that the platform comes down only for a certain amount of time. It's like a metronome, ticking the plot along as you go. And like you're playing a video game and you're waiting for the platform over the lava to move back over to where you can jump onto it. And I think that really works for what it is. Anti-capitalist, at least anti-classist commentary that I think works on a lot of levels. And also, it's extremely gross. We should mention that. It's a really gross movie because not only is the food become slop by the end as people are tearing stuff apart, but also if there are no bathrooms on those levels. So if you go, it's just straight down the platform. And so by the time you get to the bottom, the platform itself is covered in food and waste, which kind of feels a little Snowpiercer-ish. It's kind of like Snowpiercer is vertical, this one's horizontal, And here are a couple of interesting facts. Let's go with the quotes because that deals directly with what we were just talking about. The characters are Goring and Omaguri. Goring, the people above won't listen to me. Omaguri, why not? Goring, I can't shit upwards. I think, which is very telling. Interestingly enough, the film was shot chronologically. So the main protagonist, Ivan Masagui?
Yeah, maybe Masagui?
Masagui, I think you're right. I think it's Masagui. He actually had to lose 26 pounds over the 6-week shoot to show his physical deterioration.
Going the machinist route.
Or the reverse Castaway. Yeah, machinist for sure, yeah. And here's a quote from a review. I liked this movie and found the acting of all the actors very noteworthy. Sounds like it was written by a bot.
I, too, like films.
Right. New paragraph. I'm literally quoting from this here. Fans of Snowpiercer Cube will definitely enjoy this. Just an N. Fans of Snowpiercer N Cube will definitely enjoy this.
Hey, I also don't have room or time to write an A and a D.
Like Captain Crunch. You only have so much space.
Yeah, get to the effing point.
Apostrophe point. Next paragraph. One of the best part is that the director made sure that the camera doesn't linger much on the gory aspects in, once again, just an N, even the unpleasant stuff is fast-paced. What? Let me read that again. One of the best part is that the director made sure that the camera doesn't linger much on the gory aspects and even the unpleasant stuff is fast-paced.
Okay.
Rhodes Scholar.
I'm glad we've given them this platform to.
I didn't name who it was on purpose, but trust me, you know what I do.
You can name them on purpose. They put their reviews out there.
Let's go back in time a little bit to one of the earliest. It's a time tunnel. This is one of the earliest examples of this genre. It's a movie from 1964 called Lady in a Cage. This was directed by Walter Grauman, and it was written by Luther Davis. And it stars the great Olivia de Havilland, a super young Jimmy Caan, and Jennifer Billingsley. Synopsis. Recuperating from a broken hip sustained 4 months prior, wealthy Cornelia Hilliard had a portable elevator installed temporarily in the home she shares with her 30-year-old son, Malcolm Hilliard. Wow, he sounds like a winner. Shortly after Malcolm leaves for the extended 4th of July weekend during the summer heat wave, Cornelia gets trapped in the elevator when a short circuit occurs, the front graded elevator car hovering approximately 10 feet above her living room.
She barks,
sorry.
she drools, she growls.
It's funny, it says here 10 feet above her living room foyer, even though a foyer is a separate room from a living room, but let's not get into semantics. And it is pronounced foyer. Go fuck yourselves, everybody. She only having access to those few items she brought into the elevator with her. Beyond those items on her person, a book, a transistor radio, her cane, and a vase containing a single flower, no metaphor there, all her efforts go out to using the elevator's emergency functions only attracted the wrong elements, i.e. vile droogs. As two associated but disparate groups break into her house, initially with the sole purpose of robbing her of everything, but they're only able to do so partly, this is so horribly written, they are able to do so partly in being able to conduct their business out of her view. So essentially, people show up to rob her when they find out that this happens, but then there are two different gangs that show up to try and do so, and then, hilarity ensues. Now, this is probably the best of the movies we're talking about today. Here's a review. Tense, unpleasant, claustrophobic, sadistic, and scary urban tale, an outstanding and impressive performance from Jimmy Caan. James Caan. So you guys out there don't know him,
I don't know. I'm watching him right now, and he's looking like a little Jimmy Con right now.
Let's put a pin in that for later. The story shows the lack of attention and sympathy of urban populations, the violence of criminals against their victims, and very ahead of its time for a 1964 movie. I don't know, watch Clockwork Orange. I recalled the also claustrophobic and excellent 1955 The Desperate Hours, but Lady in a Cage is a more realistic, frightening, and brutal, and has not aged. That's a terrible review, a terribly written review, but the point well taken. It is kind of like the ground floor for this genre. And I do have some others I would like to get to. I don't know if I'm going to have time to. For instance, there's an Italian zombie film, not you're used to from Italian zombie films, called The End?
The End?
From 2017. I've actually seen it a couple of times now, mostly because I forgot I had watched it once before when I watched it the other night. It's directed by Daniele. You know what? I'm not even going to bother with that. It's Italian.
You say?
Mm-hmm. You took Italian. Maybe you'll help with that.
Yeah,
but
well, I'm trying to find. Oh, that does look. Yeah. The director, Daniele Misic. Oh,
see.
Misicchia?
Yeah, I could see Misicchia, and then written by Cristiano Ciccotti. And
Daniele Misicchia. I guess it could be Misicchia, but
it could
don't
be.
know.
Now, it obviously isn't as highly ranked as some of the other movies we were talking about, but I actually enjoyed it. It's flawed. It's extremely flawed, and I think it fizzles out because I don't even remember the ending, and I've seen it twice. But it's kind of the classic setup of good modern zombie outbreak films. The premise is that Claudio, the main character, is a businessman at the top of his game.
On his way to an important meeting, his elevator gets stuck, huh?
About a boopy.
What the start of the mere technical difficulty turns out to be a catastrophe of much larger proportion. Bit by bit, and with his cell phone being the only source of information as he is trapped between the floors, Claudio realizes that the world as he knew it is completely gone down the drain. What? Once familiar faces are turned savage and their blood is smeared. A little virus is transforming peoples into highly contagious, homicidal zombies. Trapped inside the metal cage with the ravenous ghouls out to get him, Claudio must rely entirely on his wits and survival instincts to break out of this hell on earth. I'd like to formally apologize to all Italians,
to all Italian speakers,
to everyone who heard this. I'm sorry from the bottom of my cold and dead heart to all of you.
No take backsies. And this is the best part. Jake took Italian in college.
See,
I took French. So now this one is, kind of a classic elevator horror film in that almost the entire film takes place either on the elevator in which he is stuck or in between floors of the building. The elevator being both the trap and refuge for those trying to survive the zombie apocalypse. The movie itself is, it's a little tired. It's kind of been done before, but it's an enjoyable watch, at least for the first, 2/3 of it. The idea that he's stuck in this thing with no hope and the world collapsed around him might lead to his death. It's also the only place he can safely be from the incoming horde of the undead. And
because it looks like it's between floors and partially open.
Yes, and that becomes a big plot point because there are people who try and reach him and try and get to him, but then they can't, and a lot of them end up dying, and then also eventually zombies know he's in there, and so he's safe as long as he stays where he is.
Good idea for a film, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Execution-wise, not great, but yeah, I mean, concept-wise, it's a good example. That's why I watched it. It's a good example of an interesting premise. The storyline said that, quote, he was trapped in a metal cage, ellipses. I'd say that, quote, the guy was lucky to be in that metal cage. Next paragraph. Boring. You know what? Great example of the entire premise, honestly. And there are a few I'd like to get to that we're not going to be able to, we don't have time to discuss.
Just throw out names, just quick.
The Elevator Game. It's out in 2022. It came out 2 months ago, and I don't think anyone's ever seen it. There's a movie from China from 2013 that doesn't have a lot of information, mostly because you can't see a lot of it, and a lot of stuff is censored in China. So it's called Lift to Hell, and the premise says that a killing spree takes place in a northern China hospital. An old elevator goes to the 18th floor underground. And that's it.
All right.
And then, of course, Lift from 2021, which is described as a haunted office, a patterned game unlocks a mystery, and a lift is their only way out. This is Indian, and it's directed by a guy named Vineeth. That's it.
Huh.
And it stars a guy named Cavan.
This is the only thing he's ever done. Writer,
Really?
Producer, director of Lift.
Let me just read the review from this, since there really is no information for it. Quote, I strictly recommend you, just the letter U, all to watch at night, alone, no spaces, with headphones connected. Starting 1/2 hour was so scary, and those sound effects were crazy. Emoji? I literally got scared in few scenes. Few scenes from this movie, DIS, are, the letter R, based on real-life incidents.
These reviews are pretty good. So there's one that says horror entertainer. Again, every single word of this, it's capitalized. Just the first letter. Movie really came out very well, comma. Cavan's acting is a pillar of this movie, comma. Some of his expressions ultimate, comma. Amrita acting too good. Both of them carried whole movie without any bore moments. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Period.
Nailing it. It continues. Good story, comma, concept and cinematography. I really liked DE, concept of dis movie, and even DERS, DERS, a good MSG in this movie for IT sector and for all other employees, spelled MPLOYESS, working in private companies. Cavan gave his best performance in this movie, but Amrita Iyer, parentheses, heroine, didn't act properly. I wasn't satisfied by her acting. Rest everything was good. Amazing. And then, that one actually got 7 stars, but I don't know how many reviews, but... And then a movie...
Out of 3.2 thousand.
Wow. Okay. Well, then apparently it's a decent watch. And then another honorable mention is a movie called Rising Wolf from 2021. Young environmentalist wakes kidnapped, bad punctuation in all of these, in an elevator of a super high-rise building at the mercy of her tormentors. I have seen it. I thought it was boring. It didn't really get to...
That's too bad.
Whatever. It's whatever. Here's a review from it. Honestly, ellipses, I've been waiting to see this movie forever because I have been wanting to see something new with Charlotte Best, who's the main character, the protagonist. But one, I couldn't stay focused to this movie to get an actual account for the plot, which left me totally confused as to what I just watched. There's no 2. It just says, okay, she's something special, but W2F, is she? Future Avenger? Soon to be member of the Legion of Doom? And that's it.
What?
I am really confused.
What does
I have
that
no idea what
mean?
I have no idea, but now I'm intrigued. Did he just drop Avengers and the Legion of Doom references? Very, very confused. Finally, I think our last mention is a movie called 4 Stories of St. Julian from 2010. The film follows 4 strangers who become trapped in the elevator of St. Julian, a decrepit inner-city building. An assassin, a religious zealot, a mother, and a thief all walk into a bar. Now, just moments after being confined, it becomes clear that one of them is mortally wounded. As the minutes tick by, a battle for survival ensues where each of them is forced to examine their sordid ties to St. Julian the building, it's like Chance the Rapper, as well as the legacy of the religious figure. That really told us nothing. It's directed by Shane Thewson, who
That's
also wrote it.
yeah, that's his single writer and director credit.
And that's it.
This was a passion project for him.
Stars Kai Evans, David Allen Graff, no relation to David Allen Greer, and Nicole Hyren.
Only 94 people have reviewed this on IMDb.
Oof, and it still only has 4.3 stars. Here's a review. Dull. I suppose you don't get much for $100,000 in the movie business. Wow. But I'm sure I could do better than this. The writing is very weak, the acting abysmal, bordering on funny, and there's no tension or mystery to keep you hooked. That's not a ringing endorsement. If you're going to shoot an entire movie in an elevator, then you need a lot more than this to offer here. One has to wonder why they bothered making it, or indeed how anybody was persuaded to finance it. Well, for $100,000, I don't think it was that tough. There are hundreds of thousands of films, and most have something more to offer. Wow, of all films? That's a bold statement. Unless you happen to be related to one of the actors, I use the term loosely, by the way, actors was misspelled, I really wouldn't waste your time on this one. So, food for thought, everyone. Cool. So, in summation, the subgenre of the elevator horror is a surprisingly diverse and populated subgenre. And I think the reason that it has staying power is because of the fact that it feeds into so many primal fears, some even incongruous with each other.
It's something we all think about every time we get in an elevator. What if something goes wrong? What's worst case scenario? You're stuck in a metal box that you have no control of, and it goes up or down. It could snap. You could fall. Anything could happen in this elevator. Yeah, it's easily identifiable.
And for a wide variety of reasons. I think that the being suspended is a big deal, where you are helpless and you have no control of your surroundings, which ties into agoraphobia, but you're also enclosed in a confined space, which obviously plays into claustrophobia. And whatever horrors are happening outside, you have the potential to feel both safe from them, but also tormented by them. And I think it kind of makes it a unique subgenre that I think most people sort of overlook.
Yeah. No, I applaud you for this niche genre. You brought stuff to my attention I didn't know about.
Yeah, same with your animal one. I'm glad we did them as separate episodes. Check out some of the films we've talked about in both of these episodes thus far. Make sure you watch Roar and Cube. Those are both things that I think you should all put yourself through.
Yeah, if you do like this, you'd like more, please hit the like button on whatever app you're at. If you want to subscribe to get more of this fantastic content, quote unquote, if you'd like to promote us a bit, that'd be cool too. You can share it to those you think might be interested. And if you'd like to write a little 5-star review on or whatever podcatcher you use, that would greatly help our visibility and spread the word about us.
Spread the good word! Yeah. Do all those things Jake said. And from Dispatch Ajax... Oh, no. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, to... Sorry, I know, I gotta... You said you wanted me to do an end cap, so we're doing an end cap. Don't forget to support your local comic shops and retailers. And from Dispatch Ajax, we would like to say, Godspeed, fair wizards.
Please, go away.